Wife decided to quit drinking forever to avoid becoming like her alcoholic colleague, and now I feel an unreasonable sense of loss and guilt. My wife and I have been together for about a decade and we've been married for 3 years. I'd say we're very happy, enjoy spending time with each other and have a similar view on the world. No kids for now, just pets. Things have been pretty great, on the whole. Over the last few years, my wife has been working in a hard but very rewarding job, and during that time, her alcohol consumption increased quite a bit. She'd usually have a couple of glasses of wine in the evenings at home to wind down. Every once in a while, she'd be involved in work events in the evenings which could get quite boozy too. Her field can be quite boozy in general. They usually have drinks in the office on a Friday afternoon, a glass or two. She never got drunk, but clearly she had become quite dependent on alcohol as a way to let off steam from her career. It wasn't unusual for her to have half a bottle of wine a night, although she'd rarely have more than that. She's quite petite though, so I guess that isn't an insignificant amount. Just to be clear, I never, in a million years, would have classified her as even remotely an alcoholic. Just before Christmas, she told me that she was going to be cutting down her drinking and was reading some kind of self-help book about doing so. I'm not quite sure what triggered her desire for this, but I suspect it has something to do with this particular coworker of hers that is about 20 years older and, to put it simply, is a bitch and is also almost certainly a high-functioning alcoholic herself. I reckon my wife didn't want to end up like her. When she started following this book, I didn't think that much of it. She's cut down her drinking before for a while, and the new year is always a good time to start things like this. However, a couple of days ago, she told me that she was actually quitting alcohol entirely and wasn't going to drink ever again. I feel awful for saying this, but this really hit me quite hard. I know that it shouldn't. People go through much worse with serious alcoholics and all, but I've found myself suffering from a real sense of loss, and then guilt, thinking I'm being selfish for not being supportive enough. She did say I didn't seem as enthusiastic as she thought I'd be after she told me. I mentioned that it was a bit of a shock and, of course, I'd support her. For some reason, this is really getting to me though. Now I know what you're probably thinking. I'm an alcoholic myself, or at least highly dependent on it, but the truth is, that just isn't the case. I hardly drink. I haven't been properly drunk since I was at college, and even then, I hardly drank compared to everyone else. I hardly ever drink at home, maybe a beer or a glass of wine every couple of weeks. I often don't drink for months at a time if I have no social reason to do so. Basically, I'm an occasional social drinker and no more. Even in those social situations, if I don't feel like it or one of us has to drive or there's nothing available that I like the taste of, then I just won't drink. This is why this is so bizarre. I'm such an infrequent drinker, surely it shouldn't bother me that my wife stopped drinking? Unfortunately, that would be too simple. Instead, I have this chasm of loss forming in my chest. I've told her that people won't really act differently around her when she starts saying she's quit. In my experience, others don't really care unless you're not drinking impedes their desire to drink. I.e., don't be a dick about it and people don't really give a crap. Unfortunately, those rules don't seem to apply to me. I think it may be because those other people are only here for short snapshots of time, whereas my wife and I have committed to spend the rest of our lives together. I keep thinking about what we'll be missing in the future. We won't be able to share a bottle of wine together over a nice dinner, at home, in a restaurant or on holiday. We won't be able to go on a date to a bar and gradually get tipsy while listening to some nice live music. We won't be able to crack open a bottle of champagne to celebrate a major life milestone in one of our lives. Years down the line, when we might have teenage children, we won't be able to give them half a glass of wine at the dining table with Sunday lunch like my parents did for me. Of course, none of this is reasonable. No one needs alcohol to have a functional and rewarding social life, and there are far too many people suffering because their spouse won't give up alcohol when they actually seriously need to. So of course, I'm in the wrong. It's breaking my heart right now, as selfish as that may be, and I really needed to vent. I tried to find some advice online and, of course, this doesn't seem to have happened to anyone else. Any Google searches just gave me hits with advice for how to get your alcoholic spouse to quit. Far more important, sure, but of no help to me. I can't talk to my friends about it because I'm not going to betray the trust of my wife. No one else knows that she's quitting for good yet. I'd usually talk to my wife about any problems I or we have, but I don't want to damage her process right now as she gets used to a new life without alcohol. Hence, here I vent/mope/despair with a throwaway account, ready for the anonymous internet to judge me if anyone makes it through my wall of text. Maybe some of you can give me your perspective on this? Has anyone gone through anything like this? Update 1. There were people who thought, as I expected, that I was selfish, that it shouldn't matter that my wife was making that decision and that I likely had my own hidden drinking problems. There were others, though, that understood and could see my point of view. The TL/DR of my original post is that my wife had decided to give up alcohol for good, had told me she thought she was an alcoholic and so was going to quit. She was not an alcoholic in the traditional sense, i.e., she didn't get drunk all the time, wouldn't drink in the day, but she did have 2 or 3 glasses of wine pretty much every evening after work. A lot of people do that. When she told me she was quitting booze for good, it was a complete shock to me and I felt a very real sense of loss. I really felt heartbroken because I felt like there would be things we would miss out on in the future together, sharing cocktails by the pool on holiday, sharing a bottle of nice wine over a romantic candlelit dinner, popping a bottle of champagne on New Year's, toasting to our, currently non-existent, children on their wedding days. I felt like that had all been taken away from me. I knew that this was small fry compared to what others went through and what she could be going through, but that didn't stop it hurting. Everyone's problems matters to them, even if an abstract observer can clearly see that one person's problems are much worse than another's. When I googled for help and advice on the matter, nothing really came up, so I want to keep my original post up and supply an update to let others that might go through the same thing that they're not alone. As I mentioned above, some people were adamant that my wife's decision to not drink ever again shouldn't affect me in the slightest. Basically, it had nothing to do with me, and if I felt like it affected me, then I had my own problems. A year on, I can defiantly tell those people that they are wrong. In a marriage, at least in the kind of marriage I believe in, you and your partner's actions and choices are intertwined. The whole point of a marriage is to share the rest of your lives together. I had expected and hoped for a long future together, sharing experiences that typically included alcohol. Our society, as a whole, is intertwined with booze. We first met when we were both tipsy at a student bar. Pretty much all the social occasions we've ever been to have involved some alcohol. That's just where our society is. Drinking was, in some ways, a shared interest. If you met a partner through rock climbing and you climbed together several times a week, got married, carried on climbing together all the time, then suddenly your married partner said, "Sorry, I'm never going to climb again," you would feel hurt. Like something core to your relationship had been taken away. So, what have I learned in the past year? Well, for one, your partner giving up booze really doesn't matter. You just adjust. I'd be lying if there were times that I miss us sharing a bottle of wine together, but those thoughts are few and far between. It's far more important to me that she's happy and feels much better about herself. She's healthier, has a better outlook on life, and when we are out together, we actually spend more quality time together. I've never been a big drinker, so if we were out, she'd get tipsier way before me, so in a way, we weren't on the same conversation level by the end of the night. Now, we can talk properly throughout. There are lots of benefits too. We spend much less on drinks now, of course, especially at home. We do, however, spend more on food. That's something I get more enjoyment from anyway though. We've been on holiday, we've been to weddings, we've been out to loads of dinners, we've had Christmas together. It's all been fine. I always knew it would be. Other people don't really judge much once you just say you don't drink. As long as you don't make a big deal about it. My wife still doesn't tell people that she's an alcoholic. The story is still, I gave up for dry January and found myself really liking it and felt better about myself, so I gave it up for good. It's just easier, makes less of an issue of it, and draws much less attention. We're probably happier than we were before, although we were plenty happy then too. I love my wife and I love spending time with her. For what it's worth, I do still drink. I didn't drink much before she gave up, and now I do drink less. I'd share a bottle on nights out before, but hardly ever drank at home. I'd say I had, on average, 2 to 3 units a week. Now I'm more at 0.5 to 1 units.
i.e., once every 2 or 3 weeks I might have a couple of beers.
I hardly ever drink when we're out together. Only if I really fancy it. When I just quite fancy it, I'd usually choose not to out of solidarity with my wife. One change I have noticed is that I judge the shit out of restaurants that have a crappy soft drink selection or lack of non-alcoholic cocktails. High-end restaurants tend to have several great options and will go out of their way to cater to you. Other restaurants do seem to judge you for not getting a bottle of wine, likely because they make a healthy profit off of alcohol. Annoyingly, we're not doing it because we want to be cheap. We'd happily pay for an overpriced mocktail that's basically just tonic water with a cucumber in.
I do enjoy being prepared for my wife now though, i.e., if we're at a function where they're handing out champagne and nothing else, I will do what I can to get her something else. I'll happily be a bit of an asshole if a place hasn't thought about providing non-alcoholic drinks.
There are plenty of people that can't drink for a number of reasons after all: religion, health, pregnancy, etc. Places really should be prepared. Now on to second story. Told my half-sister's mother she could have been my mom, causing her to cry, after she invited my dad's estranged brother to the wedding. Let me describe my family a bit. I am the youngest of 4 children, by far the youngest. I have 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. My mom is my dad's second wife. From his first wife, I have an older half-sister, who is 3 years older than my oldest full sibling. His first wife, his childhood friend, cheated on him way before, and after my dad made sure my half-sister was his, he divorced her. He met my mom and a few years later they tied the knot, and the rest is history. My half-sister has always been welcome in our house. She gets along really well with all of us and even calls my mom auntie. Her mom, though, has always been a bit of a harpy. She hates my mom for many reasons outside of she stole my man. My mom is a retired fitness model and current Pilates instructor. So she looks really good for her age while she's more average and plump. So she would always make snarky remarks like, "Oh, did you gain weight? Or are you pregnant again?" Even though my mom never stopped taking care of herself. With me though, she dotes on me and calls me the son she never had. With my older siblings, she mostly just ignore them. So my half-sister is getting married, and my dad and his ex agreed to split the cost of the wedding 50-50. My dad doesn't care about planning for the wedding, so he left it all to the ex and the bride. During one of our meet and greet dinners, my half-sister revealed that she also invited my dad's estranged brother and parents. I can still remember my dad shooting a glare of pure anger at her. I asked my mom later why he reacted like that. I never met my uncle or grandparents on my dad's side, but from how my mom spoke, my dad's ex cheated on him with his brother, and his parents knew it for years before confessing. So my half-sister could really have been my aunt or something if the sperm chase went wrong. My dad's ex was together with my dad's brother for a while after she and my dad divorced, but split soon after. And my dad refused to forgive his family for fooling him like that, and he went no contact with them for 25 years. So back to the dinner, my dad asked in a very stern, yet quiet voice why she would, and my half-sister wanted to make her wedding more meaningful by also having a family reunion. And her mother supported her. She told my dad to bury the hatchet, at least for her daughter. My dad said she didn't have any right to tell him how to act. On her way out, my dad's ex and I bumped into each other, and she commented to me how she hoped that I wouldn't have a chip on my shoulder like my dad does. If not for that, they could still be one whole, happy family. I didn't like her tone and reminded her that she was the one who cheated and broke the family. And I told her that she could have been my mom. The last part made her cry like crazy as she ran out of the house. My dad asked me what happened, and I told him, and he just grunted. Did I go too far? Update 1. My dad's ex just bawled so much and suddenly that I thought I did something awful, and I was worried. As of now, I don't really know what my dad is going to do. I know that my mom and dad are talking about it, but he really seems conflicted. I thought about asking him, but my oldest brother told me not to. He said that I had nothing to do with it, so I shouldn't bother him. But my full siblings and I just talked to my half-sibling about what she had done in our WhatsApp chat tonight. First, my full sister tore my half-sister a new one, calling all sorts of names before my brother told her to stop or leave the chat. Then he asked her why she did what she did. Turns out that her idea of including a family reunion in her wedding was an idea from our paternal grandparents and her mom. Unlike myself and my full siblings, my half-sister regularly visited her grandparents and talked to them a lot about us. My grandparents apparently wanted to see us really bad, and her mom popped the idea. Then my second oldest brother said that while it was her wedding and she could invite whom she liked, she didn't take our father's feelings into account. There was a reason that he went no contact with them for all these years. And it wasn't up to her to try to fix burnt bridges. My half-sister then asked if he was going to pull money out of the wedding, and my sister sent a brutal message is that the most important thing right now, you. I added that our father hasn't told us anything. Then my half-sister said that she shouldn't have even done this to begin with, and my sister commented. You think? She wondered if she could unsend wedding invitations to her grandparents and uncle, but then her mom might pull her money. I sent a chat to my full siblings only chat, if dad could fund the whole wedding if that meant not inviting his brother and parents. My oldest brother told me to can it and don't bother dad. She also asked how our dad has been, and I said that he is very conflicted and talking only to my mom about it. I then asked if her mom was okay since I made her cry. She said that her mom calmed down when they returned home. Apparently they got into an argument when she called my dad a stubborn sob. To be honest, I think she is in a very tight spot. She can either piss off our dad or her mom. I don't know what my dad is going to do, and my oldest brother already reminded me twice that this wasn't my business. I honestly think dad would be up for paying for the entire wedding if his estranged family didn't come. Of course it's his money though. Or maybe he is just so angry that he might pull out altogether. Edit, I didn't post the entire conversation that my full siblings and I had with my half-sister. I pulled only the relevant parts. What I was thinking when I thought my dad could pay for the entire wedding was, does dad hate his family to the point where he would pay for everything just for them not to be there? I wasn't actually suggesting he pay for everything. That's stupid. Looks like a lot of you are wondering if my half-sister knew what happened between my dad and his family. She knows that they hurt him badly, and he's never forgiven them. But not the specifics of how they had hurt him. She knew the cheating part, but not the family lied to him for years part. Apparently that's not something her mom or my dad's family discussed with her. Update 2. He suggested that I do the same here. First of all, I love my baby brother more than any other member of my family since I've helped take care of him since he was born. Second, I am very grateful for my father. He never mistreated me or made me feel lesser than his other children. So I did not mean to betray him in any way. My mother had told me about her affair when I was in middle school, so I understood early on why they weren't together. I don't think I was ever angry at her since I was always welcome to see him and his family at any time I wanted. But I wasn't aware until recently that the affair was related to my uncle. I asked my grandmother many times why my father would never visit them, and she would say it was because he was too busy with work or his kids. I asked my father one time, and he just said the same thing. I showed him their socials before, and he merely brushed over them. But I remember he never talked about them before, at least in front of me. Skip forward to recently. While I was coming up with the wedding invitation, I remember my grandparents and my mother asking if they could be invited. And I said, not knowing what had really happened, said of course. And then the dinner happened, like my baby brother described in his first post. After the dinner, my father was so cold to me that I confronted him as to what was the huge issue. My father told me that I should have known better than to invite them to a wedding that he was paying for. And I asked him what the heck was the problem. My father then asked if I knew what they did, and I just replied that he never visited them. Then I heard from Auntie that my mother had an affair with my uncle way before they married and their parents knew and hid the secret. I swear to God that I didn't know about this. I then asked why he never told me this, and my father answered that he already did the worst he could do, which was to never talk or see him ever again. He had no intention of souring my relationship with his estranged family. I then asked my father what I should do. And he just hugged me hard, and he said it was my choice. I returned the hug and went out with my mom, and she was crying when she was walking out. I confronted my mom immediately when we got home. My mother went a tirade about how my father was one who chose divorce and to break up his family, so I left. Now I am considering canceling their wedding invites, but I don't know how to do the best way. To be honest, I don't want them at my wedding anymore. If they want to celebrate it, they can do it at a different time. I don't know if I should write a letter to them. I don't want to push aside any members of my family. Update 3. So my half-sister came over Sunday and talked to my dad. Basically she made the decision to have the wedding without her extended family, and pay for the half of the wedding by herself and her fiancé. She sort of figured that her mom would pull her money out for making that decision. Dad seems to be much happier about it. I saw her crying a lot and my dad hugging her. Not sure on what happened exactly, but I am guessing she apologized and he accepted it. She stayed with us during the weekend, and her mom came by. Mom and dad wouldn't let her in, so my half-sister and her mother talked outside for a bit. I guess it started off well, but then I heard shouting from outside, so when I came downstairs, both of them were screaming at each other. My dad calmly walked out and told my half-sister to go on in. He talked to her calmly while she went back and forth from screaming and crying. Then a car came by, and a man stepped out. He walked towards my dad and held out his hand, but dad didn't take it. He sort of looked like my dad, but shorter and with longer hair, so I guessed that he was my uncle. He tried to talk to my dad, but my dad pretty much ignored him. I went to my brothers and told them that was happening, and they immediately walked down and outside. They told me to stay inside, so I continued to stare out the window. My brothers just stood on the balcony. The new man said hi to them, but they didn't respond. Anyway, my dad spoke a bit with his ex-wife for a while and came back inside with my brothers. His ex-wife was glaring at my dad for a bit before going back to her car with the guy. When my brothers sat down, I asked if that was my uncle, and the oldest one nodded. Apparently my two older brothers met my uncle purely by accident before. Things were smooth that night. My half-sister's fiancé came by, and we all had a nice dinner. My mom and my sisters went away to plan the wedding since her mother is not joining in anymore. My brothers, my dad, me, and the fiancé just talked about stuff until we heard lots of honking right outside. We went to check it out, and my uncle was back with my dad's ex-wife. My dad told my mom to call the cops while he tried to handle the situation. My brothers, my dad, and my half-sister's fiancé went out. There was some yelling and screaming, but then the cops came and they went away. So for the time being, my half-sister will be staying with us. I thought all was done until I got a text from my dad's ex after school yesterday. She asked if I could help her with something. I just blocked her number, but she then texted me on another number. I'm pretty sure my parents and brothers would say block her again, but there is nothing stopping her from using new phone numbers to bug me. Not sure what I can help her with anyway.